How should we read the difficult stories of the Old Testament? I think of the story of Jephthah's daughter in Judges 11. How do we approach those stories where we're reading through and all of a sudden we hit this speed bump, if you will, that jars us a bit? How do we approach those stories?
Well, when you hit a story like that, you may not have an answer to it right away. And you may have to put it in your pocket and wait a few years until you're able to get some clarification on it.
And remind us of the basic
So,
content of the story. Some
okay.
people might not be as familiar with the story.
Well, it's the story of Jephthah. And Jephthah is really a negotiator as well as a great warrior. Jephthah has been rejected by his brothers, and they don't want to share the inheritance because he is the son of a concubine. His brothers are the captains and the elders of Israel at the time. But they are being threatened, as the temptation was, by the Ammonites. The brothers know they're not competent. They just want a good life. They don't want to risk themselves. Jephthah is a man of some faith, very mixed character, and he's a great warrior. So they call Jephthah to be their leader. He negotiates that you have to make me your head, and now he's going to have a dynasty. And the big point of this is, it's at that point in Judges, each one is trying to establish his own family that we read about there. This is the culture. We read about the different men who are putting their sons and grandsons on horses, on donkeys. That was a sign of royalty. And they're trying to establish themselves by nepotism, not by trusting God. And Jephthah isn't all that different. Now, Jephthah doesn't have the full faith. He's like this just out there sort of a thing, but he's not really sure God's going to help him, even though God has given them covenant promises. So he makes a vow, and he says, very risky vow, and the Hebrew is somewhat ambiguous. Whoever or whatever comes out of the house, I'm going to vote to you. I'm going to sacrifice it to you if you give me the victory. Now, I have to understand that this is culture again. They lived with their animals. That in the house was also the animals. Now, whether he expected a bull to come out his front door strikes me as strange, but I don't understand. But whatever comes out, or whoever comes out, I'm going to sacrifice to it. Now, it seems to me he's coming back as a warrior, and the women come out and celebrate the victorious hero. Who did he expect to come out of the house? Right. So his daughter comes out, and then he says, you've been a disaster to me. He's all self-centered. He's not concerned he's going to take her life. He's concerned I'm not going to have any offspring. I'm not going to have this dynasty I've been looking for. And I'm going to have to sacrifice you. Poor me. I mean, it's ironic. It shows the nature of the man. Now, he does sacrifice it, but you see, in that economy, it's not that unusual for that to happen. If you think it's anti-feminism or something, that in the Greek stories, they did the same thing. That the generals coming home would make a vow like that, and they would offer up their sons upon their return. So it's a horrible story. It's the horrible consequences of unbelief. He's not to be commended for this. And the fact of the matter is, what he should have done is sacrifice me. That would have been a possibility. He could have looked to God, asked the priest to help him understand, or the law made possibilities of redemption when you didn't keep your vow. But he doesn't appeal to any of these. It's the problem with Jephthah is two things. He doesn't know God's word. And he doesn't have proper faith. And it's a tragedy.
So he becomes an illustration of foolishness. Sometimes the biblical characters don't teach us what we should do. Sometimes they're there to teach us what we shouldn't do.
And again, I'm evaluating that by the covenant. We're not to take innocent life. I know that's wrong. Well, which is worse? Taking innocent life or not keeping a vow? Both are wrong. He's left with two bad choices here. And when you're in that situation, he should have gone to the law, the priests. But the priests don't know the word either, as that book shows. The problem is they're ignorant of God's word. And it shows us the horrible consequences of being ignorant. As a teacher, I feel the greatest enemy of the church is ignorance. We don't know. We don't know the word, and many of our preachers are not trained adequately in the Old Testament.